Call to order the meeting of the Mayor and Board of Aldermen for Tuesday, September the 21st. The first item is to adopt the agenda for the meeting. I have two additions. At 7A, if you would add, allow mayor to sign an MOU with Trust Care Health to utilize the old Park Commission building for a testing and vaccination site. And if you would add at 26A, consider a contract with Headwaters Natural Resources Consulting for professional services related to the Bernie Branch Hazard Mitigation Project. Those are the only two that I have. Do you have any other changes?
No, ma'am, I didn't have any other ones.
All right. Any other board, department head have a change? All right, then with those two changes, I would ask that you approve the agenda.
So moved. Second.
All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? We received our tax revenues last week, and these are the taxes that were collected in the month of July. Sales tax came in at $949,111.28. That is down 1% from last month, but up 26% from last year. All three of these are actually up from 2019 as well. 2% tax came in at $288,932.54. That is also down 1% from last month, but up 22% from last year. Hotel motel tax came in at $35,229.77. That's down 19% from last month, but it's up 88% from last year. Bart Robinson and I have been meeting with our department heads over the past few days to look at long-range plans for each department and to discuss our staffing needs and goals. And I was sharing with a couple of the aldermen that I was speaking to in the hall to say that it has just absolutely been inspiring to meet with these department heads and realize what an amazing group of people we work with. We have folks who are always thinking ahead, and it's been really encouraging to go through this process as we look at some 5- and 10-year plans. Speaking of 5- and 10-year plans, Seth Gaines, who is the director of our Oxford Park Commission, along with Jason Lowe from the OPC board and several of us from City Hall, met with members from the Oxford School District administrative team and athletics programs, and also one of the folks that was representing the local swim team, club team. And we discussed, possible partnerships and what they would like to see in a public swimming pool. And, I had mentioned before when we budgeted for the design of this project that community meetings would be part of this process. And so that was our first meeting to start to see what our local high school and swim teams would like to see, so we will keep that ball rolling. We continue to have successful vaccination pop-up sites. We've given more than 300 people a vaccination at these pop-up sites, and I think that that is a very positive result. The Webb Family Clinic will be set up again this Friday and every Friday for the next month or two as needed at 2 locations now on Fridays. They will be at Larson's Cash Saver from 12 to 5 and next door to City Hall from 12 to 5. Again, a doctor will be present for people to be able to ask any questions that they have, as well as a Spanish translator. We are really excited to announce that if it's approved later in the agenda, that Trust Care Health will be utilizing the now vacant Oxford Park Commission offices that are under the water tower in that free parking lot. They will be offering free testing and vaccinations on Sundays, Mondays, and Tuesdays. And either Monday or Tuesday night, we're still working through the details with them and hope to have those ironed out in the next few days. But one of those nights they will stay open late. We have heard from folks who need to get their kids tested to have a negative test to go back to school or to participate in some activity, or people who need to be tested for work. And there just aren't many places that you can go after 5 and have that done. And so we're excited that this group is going to provide that service as well. So stay tuned. We will get you some more information on that. And in closing, I'd like to invite you all to join us Thursday at 1 o'clock at the RSVP Plaza as we accept the T-Mobile hometown grant of $50,000. And we are so, so grateful that T-Mobile has chosen to invest in our community. And this money will go towards the development of the public space space that's between City Hall and Square Books Junior, and it's going to help us create a space where people can read the newspaper and have a cup of coffee with a friend or watch the world go by and be able to sit in a nice green space. So we're very thankful, and we hope any of you who would like to will join us Thursday at 1 o'clock at the RSVP Plaza. So that is it for the mayor's report. I would ask you to authorize the approval of the minutes of the regular meeting on September 7th and the special meeting on September 16th.
Motion made to approve minutes.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Ask you to authorize the approval of all accounts for the city departments.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Ask you to consider the consent agenda.
Motion to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
All in favor? Any opposed? I'll ask Jimmy Allgood to come up and give us a COVID-19 update.
Okay, charts on the big screen up there. For today, the state reported 1,669 new cases with 61 deaths. We went up to 8,164 cases. That's an increase of 54 new cases since yesterday, and we've had a total of 137 local deaths. As you can see on our 7-day case average, 2 weeks ago, we were at 40.7. We dropped to 27.4. We're back up to 30.29. So overall, we're starting to see a slight trend like the state is, but we still need a little bit more data to say that this is officially a downward trend in the number of cases. So far as of the 20th, 53% of Lafayette County has received at least one vaccination, with 48% of Lafayette County receiving the full vaccination. So pretty much that's where we're at numbers-wise, if anyone's got any questions or comments.
Well, I will add that we get a morning update from Baptist Memorial Hospital where they tell us how many folks are in the hospital that are COVID positive and how many are in ICU. And today there were 37 COVID positive patients in the hospital, with 11 of those being in ICU. And that is certainly down from where we have seen numbers over the past few weeks. So that's great news. I reached out to Bill Henning, who is our hospital administrator, and asked him for his opinion on kind of where we are and for the trend that they're seeing at the hospital. And he responded, the state of Mississippi has begun to experience a decline in COVID cases throughout the state, as indicated by the Department of Health data. Over the last week, Baptist Memorial Hospital, North Mississippi, has seen a decline in patients admitted for COVID. While we are hopeful that this is the start of a consistent decrease in COVID cases, it's too early to know if this trend will continue. The hospital continues to encourage all members of the community to be cautious and to help reduce the spread of this virus. Actions that can be taken include getting vaccinated, social distancing when possible in group settings, and wearing a face mask when in public. Working together, we can overcome this public health challenge. Are there any questions for Jimmy or any comments or proposals from the board? All right, if not, then we will move on to 7A, which is allow mayor to sign an MOU with Trust Care Health to utilize the old Park Commission building for a testing and vaccination site.
So moved.
And that would be upon, once we get it to council and Pope
Upon
reads it and
council's
approves it up with their approval.
I second my motion.
All right, do we have a second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Thank you. Thank you, Jimmy. Consider and accept the FY 2021 OU Electric Division Audit Report and TVA Annual Report.
Hi, good evening. You should all have a copy in your packet or in your board pack of the TVA report and our fiscal year 21 electric division audit. I've got with me tonight Matt Wood of Alexander Thompson Arnold, who's just going to discuss a couple brief items in the audit and answer any questions you have, and of course I'll be here to answer any questions too.
Great, welcome.
Thank you, Mayor.
Absolutely.
I want to go through just a few highlights. My name is Matt Wood. I'm a partner with ATA. I had the opportunity to work on Oxford, formerly Electric Department, now Oxford Utilities Electric part. For the last few years, it is a clean audit report. Technical term would be it's an unmodified opinion, meaning that we didn't find anything of any material nature that made us believe that the financial statements would be materially misstated, whether due to fraud, error, or anything else. We had no internal control findings this year, and we had no items even to communicate just to management. We have a lesser degree that we can communicate to management without putting it in the financial statements, and we had no issues there as well. And we also performed tests related to compliance with Mississippi state laws and regulations, and all of those tests came back clean. Few highlights of the financial statements. If you looked at page 5 of the financial statements, it's the management's discussion analysis, where Rob, Chastity, and their team give us some answers related to changes from one year to the next. There was a small decrease in operating revenues, but there was a greater decrease in operating expenses. And I wanted to point out one number in the middle of the page. The last bullet point there under financial highlights says ratios of operating income to total operating revenue were 9.63% this year and 9.08% last year. Anything of a TVA utility above 7% is good. So whenever, even with a decrease in operating revenues, which is largely due to weather from year to year in TVA utilities, we still had a greater ratio there. Flipping to page 7, I'll go a little more in depth to this number in 1 second. This page shows from June 30, 2021 all the way back to June 30, 2019. Better said, it's a balance sheet. We call it a statement of net position. If you'll pay attention at the bottom of the first table, unrestricted net position is a negative 1.26 million this year. That's in comparison to negative 2.65 last year. That number, when there was a new standard in 2014 adopted related to putting pension plans on governmental financial statements as a liability for the first time, I'm going to tell the board next week that a negative $20 million number there is not really a big deal, but I will show you that about 2 years from now, the belief on page 12, if you'll look there with me, my belief would be 2 years from now, Oxford Utilities Electric Department will have a positive unrestricted net position for the first time since 2014. So that is positive news there. It is hard to compare apples to apples in a normal business whenever you're talking about governments with a pension plan, but it is good news coming there. A few changes you can see in the middle of the page. The net pension liability, it did increase about $200,000. That's because the investments at the state level only earned about 2.9% this year, just a little downtick in what investments have been. So that caused that increase there. A few other points I'd like to point out, and page 26 shows that change, going all the way back there. That shows the schedule of changes in the net pension liability. That table's a little hard to look at. It is presented in thousands because we are dealing with some big numbers there, but you can see net investment income in the middle of the page. We earned about $210,000 on a little over $7.2 million. Obviously, those are out of the hands of Oxford Electric, Oxford Utilities, so you can see that change there, and we expect that number to get better going forward. So as stated, there were no internal control findings, no issues from our end related to state compliance. I want to thank Rob, Chastity, and their team. I think this is the quickest we've ever got this report done. Thankful for their work, so happy to answer any questions you might have of me.
You may have any questions? Thank you, Matt, for that presentation, and thank you, Rob, and pass along to Chastity too how much we appreciate
Absolutely, she's so organized.
the
and,
hard work.
She sends a lot to Matt before they come down and visit, and so they get a lot of the work done in Jackson at their home office, and then when they do come visit, it's always pretty painless because she's so organized, so.
Absolutely.
Additional to the audit, the TVA annual report is included in the packet. Nothing to really approve there, just for you to review, but you do need to accept the audit unless you have any more questions. Thank you.
All in favor? Any opposed? Thank you. All right, consider the suspension and/or revocation of multiple licenses for balconies located over city right-of-way areas. Hollis is here for Chris Carter tonight. Okay, thanks.
Thank you, Mayor. This is a continuation of a discussion we had 2 weeks ago. And I want to clarify a few things. This is commercial purposes only. We have not gotten too in-depth with the residential balconies yet. The good news is the majority of our balconies have had their reports and they've come back safe. We've got about 6 businesses that we really need to discuss. We've got 3 businesses that I talked to the engineer today that they have contracted with to do the inspection. Duval's, the Thompson House, and University Sporting Goods. Mark Watson out of Tupelo is contracted. He told me that he would expect to get to those next week, and he would have a report back to us by the time you meet at our next meeting. We've got 3 businesses, Square Books Jr., My Favorite Shoes, and Something Southern, that have already had their reports completed and turned back in, and they did not meet the IBC requirement that we've adopted for the pounds per square foot for their commercial business. Now, I think it's fair to point out, we schedule these every 5 years. None of these were in imminent failure. Chris Carter, our building official, didn't go out and determine that anything was going to fall, but this board has to decide, how we want to move forward with these 6 businesses.
So there are really, I guess, two decisions to be made. One is we had given this date as the deadline, and we have 3 who, although we know they have scheduled this particular engineer to come, have not been looked at yet. So I think the first thing the board needs to decide, if I'm not mistaken, is do those balconies remain open until we receive their evaluation, or do we ask that they not use them until we get their evaluation? So is that correct, Hollis? Because it's really 2 separate issues in my mind. So the first issue is with the 3 who we know have scheduled someone to look at their balcony. What are y'all's thoughts on that?
I don't have a problem with them staying open, as long as we've got an engineer that we know is on the way and he's actually working on them. I don't know if we need a motion or what we need.
I think we do, because we had said that they had until today to do that. So I think so. Bless you.
I don't have a problem making that motion, leaving them open until we hear that engineer's report in 2 weeks. Is that right?
Yes, sir.
So for our next board meeting.
So
Yes, ma'am.
The 3,
So the 3 that we're waiting on are that have contracted with Mark Watson out of Tupelo is Duval's, the Thompson House, and University Sporting Goods.
I'll second Rick's motion.
All right, any comments or questions? All right, all in favor?
No.
Any opposed? All right, and so then the next question is, there are 3 balconies that did not meet the standards of the International Building Code, and that's Square Books Jr., My Favorite Shoes, and Something Southern. So, Hollis, the decision to be made there is?
The IBC code does not give Chris Carter the ability to, it's black and white for him. So that's why we're before you.
So what you're saying is, if a structural engineer says it can have 3 people or it can have 4 people, the question is whether or not we want to allow that?
Well, the IBC says you have to have 100 pounds per square foot, regardless if you're a commercial
Right,
building.
I'm aware of that, but I'm
Okay.
saying they're asking for basically an exception to the rules.
I think that's fair. They're asking for an exception.
Is it correct? Our question is whether or not we want to grant that exception?
I think that's fair. Yes.
The one, I guess would be My Favorite Shoes. that balcony, that stairwell to the left of My Favorite Shoes is the access to other offices on the upstairs of that building. So we gotta figure out how, if we're gonna do anything, we've gotta get those available. They gotta be able to get to their office.
I don't disagree. That is an issue. I'm not sure it's our issue.
Do we have a recommendation? I know when we were talking about Square Books Junior's balcony at the last meeting, Richard Howarth said that he had an engineer's report that said the occupancy could be X. I'll say the wrong number if I try to remember, but you know, that the structural engineer said the occupancy can be X. Do we have that for these other two buildings that have not met IBC?
We do not.
I think the one, I do know My Favorite Shoes, they have an engineer working on the remedy for theirs.
I wasn't aware of that, but that doesn't surprise
I
me.
mean, I've got a letter stating that.
Wonder why they didn't send it to Chris Carter.
I don't know.
Well, do we have,
Seems weird.
has an engineer told us on each one of these balconies how much weight they can have?
No, sir.
I know that Richard told us.
Well, Richard used Mark Watson, the same engineer. I had an informal conversation with him this afternoon, and he told me that he did not, he put in his letter back to Richard that it would not be a problem necessarily for a few employees, 3 or 4, but that under no circumstances should there be a mob of people on that deck. Now, the question respectfully will be, what is a structural engineer going to put in writing for Richard Howarth and for us? I don't know.
We have to ask to see that. See a document. I mean, if it's black and white, I don't have a problem with a structural engineer saying you can have 300 pounds, and that's it. And as far as we post that by the door and put that back on the owner and the engineer, I don't have a problem with that. But I do have a problem with them being great and saying, well, you probably have 2 or 3 people up there. Maybe it'd be okay.
So you're saying if we had a documentation from a structural engineer of this is the amount of weight or number of people that can be up there, you would consider making that their occupancy instead of
A condition of their license.
a condition of their license? That's what I'm looking for. Thank you.
So back, let me go back to, I know Richard actually had one, but the other 2, did you say they have not had one, or they have one and they failed?
Correct. And when we
Which
say,
one?
They have one and they did not meet IBC code.
Correct.
To say failed, John, I've been saying
right.
that, and then I realized today to say that it has failed would mean it's gonna fall down, in my mind.
Right.
That's not what they're saying.
It
They're
didn't
saying
meet the 100
doesn't
pounds
meet
per
the
square
hun-
foot.
That's correct.
correct.
Well, do
That's
these
correct.
people not think about asking them how much it would hold at the time? So now they gotta get the guy back.
I can't answer that. I can
Okay.
only tell you the reports that came in.
Maybe the report
Well, and I
says-
think the bottom line is that the requirement in our code and that of the International Building Code does not allow for us to make allowance. I mean, there's no special exception or any type
Well,
of.
it just doesn't mention it.
That's right. Well, I'm just saying it's all black and white. There's no gray area in the International Building Code or in our code. And so we will have, you know, if you would like to allow the balconies to stay open, then we need to have some guidelines for what that looks like.
I think we allow the balcony to stay open with a limitation.
Limitations set by whom?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think there
It's
is.
a black and white.
But is the, do we gather that the structural engineer, and I don't know, I've never dealt with a structural engineer, do we have, it seemed that Richard was saying that he had confirmation of it could be this much based on his letter, but I'm hearing you say you talked to the structural engineer and he,
And Richard told you, he said essentially what Richard said he said. He
okay.
did. He did. The
then we
question,
would need documentation
Yeah, for
from a structural engineer, I guess, Rick, to consider your proposal of,
Absolutely.
so
and we
that
don't have that.
if I understand you, what we're gonna have to ask the 3 businesses is, to provide a letter from a structural engineer, a professional, a PE stamped engineer that says, this is your maximum capacity. Is that what we're looking at?
That's what I'm looking for. I mean, somebody has to make that determination, I can't.
And this is all until they're able to remedy the.
No.
Well, the concern would be, is if they get this letter, will they remedy it?
I
Is
mean,
that-
if you give any of these balconies, you can be open with, based on whatever the structural engineer says the weight limit is.
Until-
I mean, do we know if it's gonna get worse, or is it, you know what I'm saying? I don't know what the issue is that they've
I think
pointed
we-
out as the problem.
I think we give them a time limit, because we just don't want to say, all right, well, you can have 3 people in there and let it deteriorate forever. I think we,
Well, I mean, it's not gonna be a forever, every 5 years, you're gonna have another.
I wouldn't do it every 5 years. I think you want to give them time to remedy the issue, to get it up to code.
So your take is, I'm sorry, I'm trying to be the facilitator here, and I want to make sure that we're all hearing it the same. You're saying that you would be agreeable to setting a limit based on a letter from a structural engineer, and that would be what they're allowed to have until they remedy the situation. You're not saying forever, that's their, okay.
I think that, I
You're gonna
think
give them
that's,
6 months or a year or whatever you're gonna give them, and then they have to get it remedied.
that's correct.
And until compliance, they're limited to a maximum capacity as stated within the engineer. But things don't get better with time.
Right.
I mean, it's just like me. I'm not getting better with time. I'm deteriorating as we speak. So, I mean,
Same.
it's no different. And so I agree with Jason, is that at some point in time, they have to come under compliance, or we should revoke their license, because that comes up on us. So I agree with that. Give them some time frame for compliance, but maintain that until that compliance, they have a short period of time to go and remain in a maximum capacity, as stated within the letter. Question is, what if we don't get that letter? What if the engineer says, I'm not really comfortable with putting any capacity?
I don't think that.
Then you're not gonna be able to use your
Balcony.
balcony.
And I would,
Right.
Something has to be in black and white, it can't be.
Sounds like they're all using the same guy, and that's the guy that gave Richard Haworth a number for his, so
yeah,
hopefully, I mean,
It'll be stated in pounds per square foot, I'm sure.
Correct.
Yeah.
so we're gonna put a scale beside, I mean, I'm like, you know, there's a difference between a
like
child's
getting in
weight
an
and
You, there's a
mine.
difference.
Yeah, I mean, yep. Okay, what do y'all wanna do?
I think we want to,
I think you, unfortunately, go another 2 weeks, give these companies time to get these letters filled out, and back to us. I mean, if you do it right now, only one has it.
And we don't have it.
And we don't have.
I mean, he referred to it.
It's black and white, I mean, it's.
Yeah.
It's right.
and then, but what about on the coming into compliance? How much time do we want to give?
I don't have a clue, I mean, I have to listen to the construction engineers, like that.
One question I've got, would they have to go to the historic courthouse preservation?
Not for repairs.
Yeah.
If they're changing the design, yes, but not for repairs. Repairs are something that's, you can do remedial repairs within the historic preservation guidelines without approval.
Okay.
If the repairs calls for total redesign, then yes. But I don't know if that's gonna be necessary or not.
I was wondering, when you speak to the engineer, or one of the engineers, ask them what a timeline is on getting 1 or 2 of these balconies repaired. I mean, it might be,
I guess would be, each is gonna be different based on
depending on what it is.
what, yeah, I mean,
How
so,
bad it is.
yeah.
And in 2 weeks, we'll know a better time frame.
Sounds good.
All
Okay,
right,
so-
so let me
I
make
know, I
sure.
wanna make sure that we're
Yeah.
all tracking along here. Rick, you wanna reiterate?
I'm to reach back out to these 3 businesses and let them know that we're going to require, or for them, they've got 2 weeks before we come back before this body. And within that 2 weeks, we're going to need them, we know that they're have already have an engineer's report. They need to get their engineer to write a letter to us stating what maximum occupancy for those particular balconies are. And if they do that, I'll bring it back to this board for consideration.
With the expectation being that they can remain open, consistent with those limitations until
The remedy.
the fix is made and that this board will give them a maximum time in which that fix must be made.
Okay?
That's right.
Should we include in the letter that we're asking the structural engineer to estimate that time frame, like for the next 6 months, this is the occupancy or whatever, based on,
I think y'all are
that-
gonna have to make it based on your own engineers and building inspectors. 'Cause
That's fine. I just was
engineers
trying to-
Yes, the contractors.
I mean, I just would think that depending on the state of the balconies, there are different ones that are gonna have different issues, and they're gonna be like, that one's fine for however long, but that one's not. Anyway,
Well,
okay.
It's possible that the
So-
engineer will come back and say, there shouldn't be anybody on this. I
Yeah.
cannot approve it, and if that's the case,
That's right, then that's what, so in 2 weeks then, do we need that in the form of a motion, or is that?
I have one clarifying
Okay.
question. Is that, I assume I reach out to the business owner reaches out to their engineer?
yes. But you can tell them that if in 2 weeks you don't have an engineer's report giving up them the proper limitations so that they can allow those fixes to be made within a set time, that they're probably going to have, whether it's ingress or egress or access or whatever it is, they're gonna have that suspended. So if they know
And
there's a problem,
I
they
think
need to get on it.
it would make sense to go ahead and tell the 3 that have scheduled
Sure.
visits the same thing, so that when the engineer leaves them, they leave them with the correct information, and we don't have to wait for them 2 more weeks to get that together.
And their engineer of those 3 will be able to tell them some type of timeframe that they might be bring back to us. In a year, we can have this done, and the engineer says it's okay. Or
Well, it just depends on how bad the balcony is.
Right.
I mean, there's
I
some,
think that comes from their engineer. I think their engineer, I know he's not a construction person, but the engineer should be able to say, you should be able to get this done next year, or something of that.
I would say, and I don't mean to be argumentative, but I would say that it's probably based as much on the building owner's ability to hire someone and to pay someone as it is what the engineer's, you know what I mean? I think the engineer would say, well, if all the materials are sitting right there and you've got the money, you can do it this week, but it's
But the engineers have been, surely they've been on work crews somewhere they've been doing this, they know it takes this amount of time. I mean, I don't have a clue, I don't think any of us.
I think when we give them the approval of a certain number of people until they get it fixed, I don't think anybody's gonna be in that big a hurry to hurry up and get the balcony fixed. I think some may not, depends on what the occupancy is. If somebody says you only can have 3 people up there, they may be in a big hurry, especially if it's the one over my favorite shoes. I mean, I think it all gonna depend. I don't think, if we tell Richard Howarth he's got 3 people is all he can have up there, I don't think he's gonna be in any hurry to get the thing, done.
Yeah, but he's gonna have some type of time frame. I mean, I can't pick a time.
No, the time frame would go, if we're talking about what Pope just said, back to when Chris Carter goes back next year.
no, we do it every 5 years.
Every
We don't
five,
do it
well, then
every.
it'd be
yeah.
5 years.
Well, I think Chris would say to you all, the ones that aren't meeting the 100 pounds per square foot is because they're deteriorating. And so I do think he's gonna tell you all in 2 weeks, you've gotta give them a deadline or this will go on and they'll get worse.
That's fine.
I'm just asking the engineer to throw something out.
Yeah, the engineer should give us a deadline also.
Okay?
So
So,
moved.
John made the motion, is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you, Hollis. Request permission to accept the memorandum of understanding and invitation to participate in a startup law enforcement phlebotomy program with the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration as administered by 2XL. Chief?
Mayor, this is the phlebotomy grant, and this is just an agreement that we'll do monthly reporting, and we'll be in contact with the grantees on phone calls and quarterly updates.
All right.
Second.
All in favor? Any opposed? All right. Request permission to accept the Victims of Crime Act grant in the amount of $57,967.87 with no match.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Any opposed? Request permission for Sergeant Thomas Snyder, Organizational Director for Special Olympics, to host a Special Olympics Law Enforcement Torch Run on October the 18th at 10:30 a.m. Chief?
Yes, ma'am, we've done this the last couple of years, obviously not last year with COVID, but we'll block streets and allow them to proceed to their destination.
So moved. All in favor? Any opposed? All right, request permission for Haley Anderson, Organizational Director for the Ole Miss Big Event, to host an event on October 31st from 8 o'clock a.m. until 12 p.m. Are we sure that date's right? That's a Sunday.
Yeah, I think so.
A Sunday morning from 8 to 12?
So initially, this was and I think there's a representative here from the university.
Is it on Sunday morning?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
So initially, this was just a 5K, and I think we were fine with that. We had the staff to make that happen, but it's also Halloween. In the follow-up conversations with them, they wanted to do more of a fall festival and block the perimeter of the square for that amount of time, plus a 5K, plus the overtime details we're doing that night for Halloween. We denied the permit, and so we're good with the 5K, but we said that we were not going to be able to staff that on the second part,
Yeah.
and she's here to appeal that to the board.
Okay. Would you like to say anything? You can come up here to the microphone if you don't mind. I'm sorry. Welcome.
Hi, I'm Scout Hodges, by the way. I'm a senior, and I'm the chairman of finance and fundraising. So basically, in the new permit, what we requested was that instead of the whole square, that we blocked off the section right in between here that's the public space, and then the road in front of it leading to South Lamar, and then University Avenue for the 5K. And then the only reason we would need that space blocked off in terms of traffic would be for a couple of tents and vendors we have in mind of coming to represent themselves and represent the community. We're hoping to have a vaccination tent and perhaps some food vendors, food trucks, that sort of thing. But again, it would only be on this corner of the square.
Okay, I want to make sure that we're both talking about the same. You're talking about in front of City Hall?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, down to
South Lamar.
from here.
Yes.
Down to Avenues and then take a right.
Yes.
So you want to block off University Avenue during church?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, that's a tough one. I appreciate so much all that the big event does for our community. It is amazing how many students step up to volunteer to leave this place that's their hometown for 4 years better, and we thank you for that. I would have a hard time supporting a Sunday morning festival when we have 6 churches in this area that utilize this parking for their church parking and that are traveling up and down University Avenue and around the square on a Sunday morning. I think that's just a difficult ask. But there may be another location that you could look at, like down at the pavilion, or, some other space that wouldn't require blocking traffic, or maybe
Even a different route. If they went down North Lamar and then went down Price or something.
Well, they're talking about vendors in the road, not just the run.
Yeah.
So, a parking lot, perhaps if you picked a city parking lot and asked to have that blocked off, or, one of these parking lots that's not supplying parking for a church. But board, what are any questions or?
No, I think you're on the right path, though. That
I want
we
you
need
to
to
get
choose
to
a
do
different
it.
location.
I just don't know. I want you to get to do it. I just don't know that we can facilitate it in the street on a day where we're doing so much special detail work for OPD. Where does the run start and finish?
So the plan was for the run to start, originally when we first sent in the permit a couple of weeks ago, that was kind of okay. It was supposed to start at the top of the circle, come down University, come to the square, and end at the square. So it was gonna go through a little bit of the campus and still stay on those same 2 streets and block those off. And then we met back with the, with my exec and then with the chief of police, and determined that we really kind of wanted a little bit more community representation there rather than just students.
Right.
So that was the push to then have City Hall kind of as the beginning and end point, so that we could invite families to come and participate and interact with the students.
Why don't, well, I was gonna say the parking lot behind City Hall or down at the pavilion, or I love the idea of getting the two represented together. I just think on a Sunday morning, it's gonna be hard to get many families to come.
If we play an away
to a
game, wasn't
festival.
any way y'all could do it on Saturday morning?
I think that got denied because something else was occurring that Saturday morning.
There's a CASA run that day. We have a run during that time as well.
So the big event will happen on a Saturday, but
In the
this is
spring,
the,
yes.
yeah, in the spring. This is just an
It's
event.
it's
that
supposed to be a
supports it.
fundraiser,
Yeah,
yeah.
just as their fundraiser portion for, board. Is there, let me ask first, is there a motion to overturn Chief McCutcheon's, denial of the permit? Can we work on another spot?
Yes, ma'am.
Because I want you to be able to do it. I think Sunday morning's gonna be a hard sell, though, to get families to come to any type of event, whether it's a run or a social event or what have you. So, but if you'll call us and visit, we'll try to work something out for you.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for your hard work on this. All right, request permission for 2 uniformed officers to work security for a concert at the Lyric on September the 23rd at a rate of $35 per hour to be paid by the Lyric. Chief?
This is the typical standard we do for other businesses to hire us out for security services in full uniform.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Any opposed? Request permission to approve and authorize the mayor to sign the master equity lease agreement, individual lease paperwork, and any other required documentation on leased vehicles from Enterprise for the Oxford Police Department. We covered this in our budget.
Correct. So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Any opposed? Consider a previously approved parade permit for the annual OHS Homecoming Parade for a date change.
We're just changing it to tomorrow. That's the only,
They had asked for it on Thursday, I think, and they needed to change it to Wednesday, so.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Any opposed? Thank you, Chief. Request permission for 3 employees to attend the Mississippi American Planning Association Chapter Conference in Biloxi, Mississippi, October 12th through the 15th, at an estimated cost of $3,750. Ben?
So moved.
All in favor? Any opposed? Request permission to accept a T-Mobile hometown grant in the amount of $50,000.
No match.
Woo! No match.
So moved.
I hope y'all all come tomorrow at 1 o'clock. Nah, I keep saying tomorrow. I don't even know what day it is anymore. Y'all
It's a homecoming parade.
Y'all got a great mayor up here in charge. Can't keep up with the day.
It's your birthday.
Boom, let's remember. So Thursday at 1 o'clock on the RSVP Plaza, we will accept a $50,000 grant that Ben Raquette and Kara Giles and Mark Levy and Kenny Ferris all worked their tails off on in a very short amount of time to turn it around and get this $50,000 grant. And so thank you to those of you who are in here, and thank you, Ben, for being the lead on that.
You bet, absolutely.
Okay, can we have a motion?
Second.
All in favor? Any opposed? First reading of a proposed ordinance to rezone approximately 4.6 acres, case 2784, owned by MFM Development LLC, for neighborhood residential to suburban corridor for property located at 2385 South Lamar Boulevard, being further identified as PPINs 8908 and 10381. Ben?
So it's, property's about 4.6 acres. It's currently zoned neighborhood residential. The request is to rezone it to suburban corridor. At the last Monday's meeting, September 13th, the Planning Commission did recommend approval of the rezoning request with a 7-0 vote. The property is located, it's on the east side of South Lamar. It's just south of Azalea Drive intersection. And at the completion of the comprehensive plan in 2016 and the comprehensive rezoning, there was a church that was located on the site, still is a church, although they do use it, but I think the congregation is substantially reduced in size. And then I think COVID has also had its impacts on the church. While it was used as a church facility, this facility does also have daycare, a gymnasium, and an area that was previously used as a seminary. It's actually quite a large piece of property and actually quite a few facilities on it. The applicant seeks the ability to have commercial uses on the site. The surrounding uses to the north are predominantly professional offices, and I guess also on the west with medical offices over there. Residential to the south where Hooper Hill is, and institutional uses. The property abuts. The property to the north that this site abuts was granted a rezoning in 2019 that is similar to this request. In your packet, you'll see the justification and the case history for rezonings in the state. It does deal with mistakes and change in need for rezonings. We do not find evidence that this was a mistake with the previous rezoning of neighborhood residential, although given the commercial nature of the adjoining zoning to the north, east, and west, this property could have just as easily been given a commercial zoning designation. The thought was that some residential development might be desirable on these church sites given the proximity to medical services in the area. There is a change occurring in the area, especially with the recent modification to the intersection of Azalea and Office Park Drive with South Lamar. The realignment introduced a traffic signal at this intersection, as you're aware, and it made that intersection less complicated. Recently, a traffic signal was introduced at Oxford Way at South Lamar intersection, and it's staff understanding that over the years, the church's congregation has steadily dwindled. Pandemic has had an impact here, and given the ongoing desire for additional commercial in this area, medical services and associated facilities with medical, that there is limited vacant commercial in this area. So there does seem to be some need for commercially zoned property in the area. In the packet, I did provide you a summary of the discussion with the Planning Commission, and staff recommended approval of the request, as did the Planning Commission with a 7-0 vote. Again, this is a first reading, so there's no action tonight.
Yeah. Does anybody have any questions? At our next meeting, we'll have a second reading and public hearing. Are there any questions that have been tonight? Okay. Hearing none, we will move on. First reading of a proposed ordinance amending the City of Oxford Land Development Code, case 2792.
So we're proposing a few minor, what we believe to be minor modifications in Article 2 of the Land Development Code. This deals with especially side yard setbacks in the commercial district, where we've seen people that have tried to locate accessory structures all the way to the property line. Now, you can build a building to the property line. However, it typically requires different construction, fire rating materials, and firewalls, where we've seen requests or people seeking to build temporary structures in the side yard. So we're trying to provide a clarification with a footnote.
Commercial?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, so we're looking for a clarification modification that says that accessory structures in that instance would have to be 5 feet from the property line. We are proposing a change to the vehicle repair and maintenance facility zoning district, specifically for car washes. We're trying to, this has probably been the most difficult use to land in the city of Oxford. So we've been evaluating it for the past several months. We've looked at other places and how they handle them, and in particular, the distance requirement between a car wash and adjacent residential seems to be the biggest barrier, where if you have an automatic dryer, you have to be 500 feet away from that particular site. So we believe that we can also tackle that with some screening, landscaping screening, fences to help break up some of the sound, and then also providing limitations on the time frame in which the business would operate. So you'll see those changes in the code there. And then lastly, with the introduction of shared spaces, we want to modify the sign regulation to allow anybody with a shared space to have an additional sign that would be affixed to the outside barrier. So that would help with the fire department and the police department to identify the point of entry, ingress and egress, or whatever for that particular space.
Yeah.
So this is a first reading. Are there any questions on those modifications? No.
None? Okay, at our next meeting, then we'll have another reading and a public hearing.
Thank you.
Consider a request, thank you, Ben. Consider a request for the extension of city utilities for case 2783, RAN management for a development outside the city limits of Oxford that includes site plan approval for Industrial Park Drive C-Store for property located at the northwest corner of County Road 101 and County Road 166, being further identified as PPIN 20698.
So the subject property is located on about 2.5 acres at the northwest corner of Industrial Park Drive and County Road 101. This will be a 5-pump station with an associated about 7,500 square foot convenience store. The provided site plan meets all relevant standards for the zoning and the use. Engineering and the staff report provided comments related to access, water and sewer, and stormwater. Staff also has noted that the placement of the sidewalks in the property will be on the applicant's property and not on public right-of-way due to an agreement with the county. At the September Planning Commission meeting, the Planning Commission unanimously recommended approval for extension of city utilities for development outside of the city limits of Oxford. That includes a site plan for Industrial Park Drive C-Store with the 3 conditions that are listed in the staff report.
All right, any questions?
I move we do it, extend the utilities.
Second.
Okay, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? All right. Request permission to approve a final plat for case 2786, MFM Development LLC for Colonnade Crossing Phase 1 for property located at Highway 30 and Barrington Drive, being further identified as PPINs 4562, 4644, 4515, 4643, 4642, 4510, and 15140. Gray Parker, how are you?
Thank you. I'm doing well. Yes, ma'am. This request relates to Colonnade Crossing subdivision, which is an 88-acre development north of Highway 30 and west of the Oxford School District Administration Complex. The applicant is requesting final plat approval for Phase 1, a 10-lot commercial subdivision in the traditional neighborhood business zone portion of the property. Phase 1 originally consisted of 3 lots when the applicant received preliminary plat approval for the entire subdivision in June 2020. Phase 1 now consists of the 10 lots, and that covers 15.87 acres. At the date, we have not received any complaints from or comment from the public, and at the September Planning Commission meeting, the Planning Commissioners unanimously recommended approval with the 7 conditions stated in your report.
All right, so you see the 7 conditions are listed here. Are there any questions? All right, is there a motion to approve?
Motion to approve.
Second.
All in favor? Any opposed? Thank you. Request permission to approve a final plat for case 2787, Updraft Investments LLC for the Lamar Phase 2, Lot 8, for property located at the Lamar TND, being further identified as PPIN 5067. Welcome back, Robert Baxter.
So this lot is about 3/4 of an acre and will be further divided into 14 fee simple lots. Lot 8 was initially platted with the intent of having townhouse-style condominiums, and so the applicant is returning with a concept for 14 small house detached residential on fee simple lots. The proposal meets the standards for developments in TNBs. Engineering and the staff report provided comments related to retaining walls, water, sewer, and other utilities, traffic and access, sidewalks, and stormwater management. Engineering has also noted technical changes that are needed to the plat and the need for clarification about utility placement. Previous comment number 4 regarding water mains has been satisfied to the satisfaction of staff, and that's why we're hearing it now. So at the September Planning Commission meeting, the Planning Commission unanimously recommended approval of the request for final plat amendment approval for Lamar Phase 2, Lot 8, with the conditions that are listed in the staff report. Staff recommends approval of the amended final plat for the Lamar Phase 2 with the following conditions, the following 10 conditions.
Move we approve the conditions.
Second.
All in favor? Any opposed? Thank you. Right, Rihanna, consider a request for extended work hours, including Sundays, for work at the airport at Ole Miss from September 21st through October the 8th, 2021. And I know that you have put together, I've passed along to you questions that we received via an email this week that you will address, so thank you.
Yes, so this request is from the university and their contractor apologize, I've got my memo in here.
Barge design.
Barge design, yes.
DeBarge.
They, so they are required to groove the runway, and this request is for them to complete that work. The reason they're asking to do the work at night is so that they can keep the runway open during the day and keep the airport functional for use by businesses, workers who are traveling. They want to keep the airport open. They've asked for this specific time period because it is between the home games. And I noted in a response to an email from Alderman Bailey regarding two citizens' complaints that the contractor has actually asked for a smaller period of time than what I have noted, and his subcontractor has stated they need less. So the contractor that is performing the grinding says that they can do the work in 6 to 8 days. The contractor asked for 10 days to give a cushion, and I was working very quickly trying to get the reports, and because I was going to be out, and so I asked for more time to allow for extra time for weather delays and just to be sure that it was covered, because I knew that it was going to be, had to be complete before the home game on the 9th. So there was a little bit of concern, was that it was such an extended period. The reality is that they need it through September 30th is what they've asked for. That's their actual request.
But there will certainly be a rain day or two that they end up having to push, yeah.
Yes, and so the equipment, it's just a piece of equipment that they will grind the grooves in the pavement, and it's for friction resistance, and it's a requirement. This project, I believe, also has federal grant funds associated with it, which will have requirements for timelines of completion and getting this grooving in place following the paving. Leslie prepared a map for you that shows the runway distances. So there was a question from the residents about how the distance to the residence was determined, and I had not included that in my packet. I've put it on the up there for you now. And so it shows the residences that are located around the runway itself, because that's where the work will be completed. And so you can see that on the 314 side, and I forget the name of that development there's the nearest residence 457 feet from the runway. And then on the other end of the runway, the nearest residence would be, I guess, in the community or green neighborhood, 658 feet. So that shows the measurements and how they were determined. It's going to be a fast-moving operation, probably, hopefully 800 to 1,000 feet a night, potentially. So they will not be at these residences for this complete entire time. They're going to be moving along.
And what is the noise generated?
So it's going to be a piece of equipment. It's not a milling machine, but it'll be similar to that type of noise. It'll just be a continuous noise. It will not be backing up, beeping. It will not be the
like a sound machine
revving up. It will be kind of a monotonous sound. Yes, and so that's
repaving, or are they just grooving?
They are just grooving. They've completed all of the paving. Okay. They've completed all of that work. And so now this is just to put the grooves, and they've got to groove every 1.5 inches. There has to be a groove all the way across the runway. So it's a tremendous amount of work that they're completing in a very, very short period of time.
It's a safety issue, like you said.
It is absolutely a safety issue for the skid resistance.
Safety issue and the timing, it has to be done at night. I mean, that runway has to be kept open.
Yes, and the contractor has noted that they will take any actions if there's a problem, a request. So if we get a call, OPD gets a call in the middle of the night, they're gonna call me, and then I'm gonna call the contractor, and we're gonna figure out how to solve it. If that means that they pick up and move to a further away location, whatever we need to do to get that addressed for the property owners. It will be, like we handle all of our other nighttime requests. We don't ask for a lot of them, but we do have a few a year. And so we really work hard to make sure that the citizens can sleep, because I know I don't like to be woken up in the middle of the night, and I know no one else does either. So we want to make sure that it's painless as possible.
I make a motion to approve.
Second.
All right, any comments or questions? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Thank you, Rihanna. Consider the annual materials bids received.
Yes, we received our annual material bids for materials to use by various departments. The bid tab is attached. I recommend you award the bids to the lowest bidder with 2 exceptions. One is for our video monitoring, pipe cleaning, and root cutting services, and I would ask that you award that, allow us to use 2 contractors, both Southern General Contractors and M&N, and the reason is that their prices are based on mobilization fees, and so we'd like to be able, instead of having to sit down and calculate, we want to be able to use whoever's available that can get that work done for us. And then I've also noted in the report, we didn't receive any bids for our concrete materials, which is a problem. So when Ken is replacing a sidewalk, we call our bid and order concrete, and if they can't get us concrete, we go to the next one. Nobody provided bids this year. We've reached out.
Wow.
Is that
Yes.
because of pricing?
What's that?
Is that because of pricing?
So,
Pricing or?
so one of the suppliers stated that there was a $1,200 fee associated with the bid, and we're trying to confirm that and figure out. I know that reverse auction, there are some fees, but I don't think this would have been a reverse auction. It's not a reverse auction item. We're trying to confirm what happened.
But we can approve this and you can still try to get another bid.
Yes, so what I would request is if we can get the materials from state contract prices, then we'll do that. So that would be one, and then if not, if there's an issue where we need to rebid it, I would ask that we can be allowed to rebid it, and if it's an issue that they didn't want to bid for a year-long period, we would ask for a shorter period, 3 months, whatever we need to do so that every single time we're trying to pour a sidewalk or repair a sewer line, we're not having to stop and get quotes.
Then go from there.
So.
Move we approve the annual bids.
All in favor? Any opposed? Thank you, Rihanna. I know that is a ton of work that goes into that list, so thank you.
Russ locks himself in.
Thank you, Russ.
Yes.
Request permission to advertise for the Alexa and Corley Beth Inlet Repair Project.
Yes, we are very excited to be here, ready to advertise for this project, and I know the residents in this subdivision are going to be grateful to have their sidewalks back in operation. We're ready, and we'd like permission to advertise.
I move we approve.
All right, a motion is second. All in favor? Any opposed? All right, then we have the addition at 26A, consider a contract with Headwaters Natural Resource Consulting for professional services related to the Bailey Branch, Bernie Branch Hazard Mitigation Project.
Yes, so I added this to the table tonight. We are required, we've been working through our application process for this project. Jimmy's helping us move through this process, and it's a $675,000 grant to make those improvements. They've now requested this environmental assessment, which is when the qualified professional will go in and look for wetlands, endangered species, threatened species, all of those.
This is when we found that bat doing Oxford Loop Extended.
I'm praying that all the homeowners out there have scared away all the bats.
What was it, a long-eared something bat? Is that what it was? A long-eared bat?
Yes.
Yeah.
So, but we need this professional to.
You remember that? It delayed our project for months. Because the fool had to get out of the tree himself before we could build. Yeah, anyway.
Where's Pat Patterson?
I know. That's right. Motion is second. All in favor? Any opposed? Thank you. Approve the Lafayette Master Gardeners' participation in the Adopt a Street program. Mark Levy.
Good evening. I'd like to welcome Ms. Jan Henning, who's here tonight to represent the Lafayette County Master Gardeners. Michelle Robinson and Jan and I have been working together for several months to finalize the details of this Adopt a Street program. And as you'll recall, back in the spring at a work session, we looked at the liability waiver and the agreement. And since that time, we've been working with 2 groups, the Oxford Garden Club and Lafayette County Master Gardeners, to determine an appropriate street right-of-way to adopt for cleanup. So tonight's meeting, we're seeking just with the agreement with the Lafayette County Master Gardeners, which is in your packet. And I'd like to just point out a couple things about the program. So all the participants from the group must sign a liability waiver in order to participate. The group will, at a minimum, agree to pick up that right-of-way 3 times a year. The group will inform Michelle or someone in environmental services prior to pickup. Environmental service will provide the vest and the equipment that they need to pick up and the trash bags, and then they will also pick up the trash bags the next day. They'll schedule that. And then the group will be responsible for providing a cleanup report. And on the city's behalf, we will provide 2 street signs at either side of the, I believe Michael has a map of the,
We've got it in our packet.
yeah, in the packet. Anyway, so the
There it
Lafayette
is.
County Master Gardeners were proposing to adopt Bramlett from University to Avent Park. So that's really all I have. Does anybody have any questions, or do you have anything?
No, I think it's a great idea.
Thank you so very much for agreeing to do this. We appreciate it. You and I have talked about litter for I don't know how many years, every time we've seen each other, so thank you very much for, we are blessed to live in a place where people walk the walk and talk the talk and say not only somebody should do something about the litter, but let me be the one that does something about it. So please relay to all the Master Gardeners how much we appreciate their commitment and help on this. So do we have a motion to approve this Adopt a Street program?
Second.
All in favor? Any opposed? Thank you. All right, consider a revocable license for HBC Enterprises LLC for the use of surplus municipal property on East Jackson Avenue.
Okay, as the board has done with St. Leo and Oxford Burr Company, HBC is requested, HBC Enterprises, whose owner is Hudson Chadwick, is requesting a revocable license for use of surplus property on East Jackson. And the area that we're talking about is, well, you've got a map of the B2 and B3. The license and the terms of the agreement are in your packet.
It's basically like the rest of them.
Yeah, it's like the rest of them, but I do want to point out that it's contingent on the shared space permit from the planning department and the ABC permits and the insurance. So they have to provide those 3 things before we will grant them the license. We're just granting permission to give them the license. If it's approved, it's $23 square foot for an annual total amount of $18,674.85.
Move to approve.
Second.
All in favor? Any opposed? Thank you. I would ask the board to consider an executive session. All in favor? Any opposed? The board is now considering an executive session. Thank y'all.